Coogs House, the Houston Cougar win may have never felt in doubt, but sandwiched between some of the biggest game of the season, it felt like Houston was right back on track.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a live post-game edition of Locked On Cougs. I'm your host, Parker Aintree. Thank you for making us your first listen after the game, your first listen the next morning, or whatever the case may be, whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater that came to that by. We appreciate you making a Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in the world. And Houston pummels Ryder. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. We'll be breaking some of that down and looking in the second segment at what this means moving forward to the Players Era Invitational for the Houston Cougars. From the comment down below, you don't know what to say. Tell us what your favorite play of the game was if you watched it live. And if not, start talking about Vegas. What do you like to do in Vegas? Are you a craps person, blackjack person, things like that? All right, let's get on into it because Houston is led by, let's see, have you heard this before? Kingston Flemings. He's on the show once. The same guy. Kingston Flemings dominates both ends of the floor. 8 of 10 from the field. Has 5 assists. Has 2 steals. A big block. What did the kid do? I think what's important to note here about Kingston, and I want to talk about other guys in the rotation too. I talk about Kingston all the time. I think what's important to note here about Kingston is that in a world where people commented all offseason when I told you 2 freshmen would start, in a game where, minutes were pretty evenly spread out amongst about 8, kind of 9 guys, Kingston Flemings played 31 minutes, and the next highest guy to play minutes was Chase McCarty, a redshirt freshman off the bench with 26. Right? Like, they need him on the floor running things and leading things. And further, I think they want him on the floor running things and leading things. It's when this team is at its best. Just truly spectacular performance on both ends out of him, as always. He plays at a different speed, but never looks rushed. And there are better ways to articulate that. I can't talk about it all year long with him about that, because that is just he's such a fantastic young man and basketball player. But I will say that I came in this game looking kind of for other things, because he and Chris Cenac they both had big games against Auburn, right? And so we were like, okay, the freshman lead the way against Auburn, that's great. But a big part of this team's title, dreams down the season, the idea that Houston can win a title in April was really laid more at the feet of the fact they had 3 guys coming back from last year's team that had frankly not had the start to the season you were hoping, whether that's rust or whatever. And I thought that really, for the most part, the Houston Cougar rotation looked a lot more in sync tonight. Obviously, nowhere near as talented a team in your opponent between Ryder and the Auburn Tigers. But things just seemed in sync from a movement, a defensive alignment, the way they're flowing around. And as Ray here points out, they're just getting started. He says that in the chat. No, I think that, look, I said it in the short, the vertical video. I'll say it again here. Houston won this game when they scheduled it. Ryder is not even a great MAAC team. But I don't think that means you can't glean things from it about what Houston did in terms of their performance. I mentioned Kingston. Chris was perfect from the field, 12 points in just 15 minutes. Could you say maybe get more than 1 rebound or whatever? Sure. He also had a steal and a block. I think he had a pretty impactful time out there. I looked at Jojo, Tugler, and Emanuel Sharp, though, as guys that really felt more like themselves in these moments. Tugler was 6-8 from the field, had 9 rebounds, 4 blocks. I only had 3 down in my note sheet here, but he had 4 blocks, big impact, 3 steals as well. The guy is all over the floor defensively, looking at the Defense Player of the Year. And that felt more like the Jojo Tugler we thought we were getting this season. I think that that's important for what Houston's got coming down the road, that if this team is going to be national title contention good, Jojo is going to need to be Defensive Player of the Year caliber, or at least a candidate for that award like he was a year ago. He felt way more like that this year. Now, yes, they were playing Ryder, but he did the things that you would expect a National Defense Player of the Year to do against an opponent like Ryder. He did the things the way that they're supposed to be done. Emanuel Sharp saw the three ball going a couple times, got out in transition at least twice, I believe. That's all good to see out of him, frankly, right? We hadn't seen him in that space in a minute. And even the 3 of 8 from three, I think, leaves some room to be desired. We've seen games before where he goes more like 5 of 8 just because he's on fire, right? And this wasn't that game, but I'm sure it was good for him to see the ball go in the basket a little bit. Can we talk about Chase McCarty? And Chase McCarty, I mentioned in the offseason, was going to be an interesting guy to see how he fits in the rotation. And after the very first game against Lehigh, I was like, wait a second, Chase brings something to this team in terms of rotation that I really, really like because he had the second most minutes for Houston tonight, I mentioned at 26. But his positional flexibility, in contrast with Chris Cenac, where they're both guys that can play the 3 and the 4, means that when they're out there together, you can run a bunch of different stuff. But perhaps most importantly, when they're out there for one another, like Chase comes in for Chris or vice versa, you don't have to change what you're doing. And I think in a world where the strength of them both is that they're so versatile that if they're that versatile, getting to see them ultimately also get to play the 3, also get to play the 4, and then that Houston can work a 2 big or a 1 big offense with either one of them at the 4 is really a functional strength where they have a lot of options to attack opposing defenses. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. This part of me was really happy to see Mercy Miller get loose tonight some too. 10 shots, 14 points, got the foul line a little bit. He's always had good instincts defensively, and he did have 3 steals. So this felt like, a good defensive game for him. I think the things he did defensively in this game were actually more like things he did better, I should say, in this game defensively compared to a year ago were stuff that's not in the stat sheet, positional rotations, tagging the backside, right, boxing out even if he doesn't get a rebound. Like, those were growth areas for him a year ago, which why he didn't on the floor as much as like fans might have wanted him to. And ultimately, he was much better in all of those areas on Thursday night. Now, the one spot I hadn't mentioned that I think is still coming along some is Milos. And I think, the internet can internet. We'll say that. The internet can internet. And Milos had 8 points. He had 6 assists. He had a couple rebounds, right? Like no turnover. Like good line for a point guard that played 24 minutes, right? Not crazy. I think people were expecting this like leveling up out of him. And I think what's interesting in watching that, and I'll be interested to see how Vegas goes. It looks like to me, so I fully came in this year thinking if they're going to start Kingston and Milos, which you heard over the summer, they might. And I said, that can't be right. And then they end up doing it. And like, oh my God, it's working out so well. My assumption was going to be that Kingston was going to have trouble playing off of Milos. Having 2 point guards on the floor was going to actually impact the younger guy more. And what's played out on the floor to me is that because Milos is giving the ball up so much more, Kingston is running point when the two of them on the floor a lot more of the time, I think, than anyone would have predicted, and doing successfully. Like, he should not be giving the duty up. I think it's interesting that Milos appears to be the one that's having trouble adjusting to his new role, and I'm not worried about it. Can I say that? I'm not worried about it. We saw Milos last year adjust to Houston and the culture. He missed part of the preseason, the broken nose. He went out there and, look, I'm going to be honest. He had a couple of his worst games of the season in the first 3 weeks of the year. And then when push came to shove, he's making the game winner in the Sweet 16. He is player of the tournament in the Big 12 tournament. He is locking down point guards from future pros from Tennessee in the Elite 8. He is locking down future pros at Duke in his Final Four. I mean, he didn't have the offensive performance I think in San Antonio people wanted, but he had really, really strong showings when it really, really mattered several times for Houston. Floater game goes crazy. Arizona still has nightmares about it. And that was all after a rough start last year. I would not call this nearly as rough a start as he had last year. And I think it's almost a more understandable easing into things, right? Because he's playing kind of a new position. And so I understand people say, well, he's only got 8 points, or he only had a couple rebounds. He's playing off the ball. He shot, 1 of 5 from 3. He was But this is all new looks, new options, new systems. The ball's coming to your hands differently than it did from previous players. And so I think it's very understandable. And I thought he looked in control tonight in a way that I'm not worried about in the future. They play Syracuse on Monday in the Players Era NIL Invitational in Las Vegas. And I think that really we're going to learn more about this then, but those are some of his worst games last year, and he's still, like I said, ended up turning around and having a strong year. So we're not even a full year out from those, and we're talking about like he may be kind of easing his way back into things and be fine. So I'm on the whole very optimistic about the look of the night. I thought Houston got exactly what they needed and wanted to out of the Rider game tonight. I texted a couple guys that I talked to, and I think that it sounds like they kind of feel the same way. Like, could things have been better? Sure. You put up 91 points in 40 minutes, and I think got what you wanted out of it. More later, but I think I'm feeling pretty strong. I want to talk about that Las Vegas players thing and how I'm feeling going into that in just 1 second. Before we get to all of that, I should remind you that today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel, because it's officially basketball season. The NBA is back. The Rockets are good. The Coogs are good. Basketball is all over the place in Houston. And there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you miss the start of a game, ride the hot hand, anything you want to do, FanDuel has live bets, everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even continue your live bet on the same game parlay for an even bigger payout. It keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. So get in on the action at FanDuel right now. FanDuel is giving new customers $300 on bonus bets. Your first $5 bet hits. So at FanDuel.com today and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Park Rangers locked on Coogs here. We're going to have more to break down on Syracuse by the time we get to Monday morning. We'll probably have two things out for you Monday morning on Houston and Syracuse. I'm working on two. We'll see how much gets out, because we also have a TCU football game this weekend and all kinds of stuff to get down. Oh, and it's my 5-year wedding anniversary. So all kinds of stuff getting to this weekend. But I'm excited to see Houston play Syracuse, mostly because there's a weird part of me that's interested in seeing what Syracuse even looks like now. Adrian Autry is there replacing Boeheim. Obviously, things are a lot different. There's still an ACC basketball program, I guess. But Syracuse has a number of talented underclassmen, including Donnie Freeman and Keenan Anthony. I don't think that Keenan Anthony is going to be I think he'll be good. I don't think he's going to be Carmelo. I think that's going to be an unfortunate comparison for him. So Carmelo's like a Hall of Famer, but they got a strong roster though. Three guys, almost four guys in double figures scoring. Shouts to William Kyle, who's exactly at 9.8, so he's almost there. But he's a double machine. If you check him out, as a big fella inside, 6'9", 215, really strong basketball player. Donnie Freeman does a lot of things a lot of different ways. 6'9", 18 points a game, and he does shoot like 3 threes a game. He does not strike me as a tremendous 3-point shooter, but they certainly let him do it. And you never know. It's a 1-game sample in Syracuse or with Syracuse in Las Vegas. You don't want to be the team he gets hot against. Frankly, as much as I give Keenan Anthony a hard time, and he's not going to be Carmelo, and that's not a fair comp or whatever, he is a good shooter. He's almost 40% from three on over 3 attempts on the year, 3 attempts per game on the year so far. And then Nate George, we mentioned, is their third double-digit scorer. He came from Dream City Christian, school you might hear more about with the Kenelosi's commitment tomorrow. We'll see where he decides with Houston being his top 3, but he is currently at Dream City Christian. His former backcourt mate, Nathan George, is laying up for Syracuse. So maybe we'll be talking about Dream City Christian a whole lot. We'll see. Now, Nate George is a much better shooter even than Kean. He's getting, again, over 10 points a game. He's hitting almost 2 threes per game on about 3.5 attempts. And he's really much more of a jump shooter, where Freeman attacks the cup pretty well, I feel like. And so it'll be interesting to see what Houston does with them. If I'm being honest in my evaluation of who covers who, I imagine they put Chris Cenac on Donnie Freeman. Freeman's big frame and multi-level scoring to me means you need a big, strong athlete on him. That's why I think Cenac gets him. I would not be surprised to see if Keenan Anthony gets covered some. by Kingston Flemings. Keenan Anthony has not started every game, but I think he'll start this week. We'll talk to more Syracuse folks between now and then to get ready for that one. Does Houston look ready? I think that's kind of the question we ask after tonight's game is, does Houston look ready for all of that after a short Syracuse scout? And I think yes. I don't mean that to say like I'm not – I hope that doesn't come off as a slight to Syracuse or anything they've done. Syracuse has just not played the same caliber schedule, we'll say, yet. They've let's see, they played Binghamton, Delaware State, neutral site Drexel, and Monmouth. And in those games, while they are winning, they didn't exactly run away from Monmouth, right? And so I think they've got a lot to figure out there. Now, obviously, this would be Houston's number one team in the country. They've got was a week ago on May, where will be on Monday when the new polls come out. They got a target on their back either way after playing last year's title game. Autry has not been a head coach very long. This is just his third year. And frankly, you could argue that replacing Boeheim is just this gigantic task and hard for anyone to do and all of that, right? But Syracuse is not – I mean, there will never be another 2003 Syracuse anyway, so I don't know why that comparison matters. But it certainly feels like a program in reflux and rebuild, and Houston's catching them at a time when they have some talented players that have probably not put it together yet. Like if I look at this, they've got five guys that have graduated college in 22, 20, or graduated high school, I should say, in 22, 24, or 25, that are all top 50 in their respective classes. Like they've got talent on the roster. And I mentioned they got like Donnie Freeman can attack in a couple ways. Nate George and Keenan Anthony can both shoot. I think Keenan Anthony also has mid-range stuff a little bit better. Big Bruiser and William Kyle. Like they got options too and how they do it. I just feel like Houston's too big a machine for this one for them. And frankly, if Houston come out and laid an egg against Ryder, or come out slow against Ryder tonight or whatever, I might feel like they could get caught some kind of way. But I think that, honestly, that's not what's going to happen. Houston came out tonight and went up 17-2 and looked as locked in as they have all season. Now, it will be interesting if the going gets tough. Puzzleite here asks, he says, I know Kelvin's experimenting, but Kingston needs to get some more volume. I wonder if they get to another tight game, if you see that, because we saw a tight game against Auburn just last weekend. And honestly, Kingston had the ball in his hands on the stretch, and I commented after the game, his lone mistake to me was giving the ball up in that moment. I wonder when the moment arises again, does he give it up or not? I don't know that it happens on Monday. I know it did not happen tonight. We'll see if, when, and how it happens. Tennessee looks strong, so maybe it's that one. We'll see. We're breaking more things down as we get closer to them at Locked on Coogs. So hit subscribe and hit that bell so you know when we go live. Tonight's show has been a fun post game. Ryder is a fun tune-up, to say the least, and getting ready for Las Vegas. We're also talking about Houston and TCU tomorrow, and then potential big commitment to be paying attention to a young kid that has Houston as top 3 at Kenna Lozier. He makes a commitment live on CBS tomorrow afternoon. So make sure you check that out. Check out Locked on Coogs in the morning. And then this Saturday, as I mentioned, is my 5th wedding anniversary. So we'll see how much post-game we get into then. But the game's fun and exciting. We might talk a little bit, right? People understand, right? Right? Not a whole lot of comments on that, right? So I'm going to let that hang out there. Today's show's been brought to you by FanDuel. Locked on Coogs, the Locked on Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight and Friday morning. Go Coogs.